Hi darlings, it's your girl, it's the Baking Betty. Welcome back to my channel. Today I've got a surprise for you. We are making cake pops. I'll be sharing with you all the tricks and hacks on how to make the perfect cake pops. But before you do that, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you do not miss a single tutorial whenever I do upload. Let's get popping. Okay guys, when you're making cake pops, you can actually use cake cutoffs or cake leftovers. You don't have to make a cake from scratch when you are making cake pops. Unless you don't have any cake cutoffs, then unfortunately you have to bake a cake from scratch. It can be any flavor of cake. I'm using lemon in this video. It can be vanilla, chocolate, the list is endless. So what I'm doing is I'm going with my hands and making crumbs out of the cake cutoffs and then adding 1 tablespoon of buttercream, and I'm going to be mixing those two together until I get the consistency I like. So what you don't want to do is to add a big chunk of buttercream at the same time and end up with a dough that is very soft and very difficult to shape. But you want to add your buttercream bit by bit until you are happy with the consistency. At the end of the day, you want a consistency that is like Play-Doh, and it makes it very nice to shape and very easy, and it firms up very quickly for your cake pops. Okay, I'm just checking my dough to make sure I'm happy with the consistency. Okay, that is perfect and it's going to be easy to shape. So the next step is to actually measure out equal sizes of the cake pops. So I'm going to shape this into balls. I'm using an ice cream scoop to make sure I'm getting equal sizes of my cake pops. I'm using my hands to shape and smooth out the balls into nice round shapes. So you can actually use anything to measure out equal size of your balls. You can use a spoon or anything literally, guys. That's if you don't have an ice cream scoop. So as long as you make sure that your cake pops are all equal in size. So I'm just going to continue the process and shape the pops into nice balls and smooth them out with my hands until my dough is finished. Okay, another thing to note is that I am actually placing my balls on a baking paper, and the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want the balls or the cake pops to stick on the surface. So placing them on a baking paper, it makes it easier to be able to lift them up whenever you have to. After I finish shaping all the balls, I actually pop them into the fridge overnight. So this step I do it the day before. I do that for my own sanity. Like, I need to make sure that my balls have had enough time to firm up. But if you have to probably do this the same day they have to be ready, please pop them up in the fridge for like 2 hours, 3 hours anyana, guys, just so you make sure that your balls have thoroughly firmed up before you move on to the next step. Our cake pops have firmed up and are ready to move on to the next step. So our next step is to melt our chocolate that I'll be using to dip in the cake pops. I'm using white chocolate that I get from the cake shops. You can actually use any white chocolate of your choice, or even candy melts in any color, or dark chocolate. So I'm just breaking this into pieces so that it melts up quickly. I'm using a double boiler to melt up my chocolate, but you also have an option of using a microwave. But if you're using a microwave, to avoid it burning, because sometimes it does burn, that is, the chocolate burns at times when you're melting it in the microwave, you just have to melt it in intervals, let's say of 30 seconds. Every 30 seconds you take it out, you stir it up and take it back, so that it just makes sure that your chocolate does not burn. So I'm just continuing to stir in my chocolate to make sure that there are no lumps and it's completely smooth. Okay, next is to transfer our chocolate into a jar. Make sure you transfer your chocolate into something that is tall and narrow so that you are able to dip in your cake pops nicely into the chocolate. So it can be anything, a jar or a cup, as long as it's tall and narrow. Alright guys, now we're moving along to the not so fun part, the part that frustrates a lot of people. Guys, a very important tip to note when it comes to this point, make sure your chocolate has completely chilled before you start dipping in your cake pops into the chocolate. Now the reason your cake pops crack, it is because you dip in the cake pops into your chocolate while it's still very hot. To avoid that, you will wait for your chocolate to completely chill. I hope you get that tip. You write it down if you have to, you plug it on the wall if you have to, but never forget it. Wait for your chocolate to completely chill before you start dipping in your cake pops into the chocolate. So what I'm doing now is dipping in the cake pop stick into the chocolate and then sticking it in the cake pop, and then I'll allow the chocolate to completely set so that I make sure the cake pop do not fall off the stick. And now it's time for the magic, right? I'm going to dip in our cake pops one by one into the chocolate. So I'm just going to allow that excess chocolate to fall off before transferring the cake pop back into the baking paper. So if you notice, this first one is a bit transparent, meaning my chocolate is still very light. So I'll have to go in, cover that. Once it's set, once the chocolate set, I'll have to go in for a second coat so that I make sure that my cake pops are fully covered in chocolate, that I do not have to see the cake underneath or inside the chocolate. Okay, we are going in for the second coat. Guys, you'll notice that there's a huge difference between this one, that is the second coat, as opposed to the ones with only one coat. I'm sure you can spot the difference. This is mainly because my chocolate, like I have explained, when I started, my chocolate was still very thin. As much as it was completely chilled, but it was still very thin. So hence, it didn't give my cake pops a full coverage. But you'll notice as you move along and continue making more cake, dipping in more cake pops, your chocolate gets even more chilled and more thick, and as a result, your very last cake pops will not even need 2 coats, but 1 coat will be more than enough. So I'm just going in with some sprinkles while my chocolate is still wet, just to make our cake pops look more pretty. Alright, for the last 4 cake pops, I've decided to dip them into a colored chocolate. So I'm just going in with food gel color. I'm using the color Deep Pink, just a little tiny bit with a toothpick, because I don't want the color to be very strong. So yeah, so I'm continuing to dip in our cake pops like we have been doing. These ones will not be needing any 2 coats, just 1 coat will be more than enough because our chocolate now has become thick. So 1 coat will be sufficient. So I'm just following the process exactly the same way, nothing different. So what I'm going to be doing with these ones, with the pink ones, I'm going to drizzle them with the white chocolate that you saw me transferring into the other container. So I'm just going to transfer it into a piping bag and then cut the tip very small and then drizzle it with white chocolate. And lastly, I'm just gonna go in with some silver sprinkles over the drizzled chocolate before it starts setting, just to add in a more to our cake pops. Cake pops, guys, are very fun to make. You can be very creative with cake pops. Just play around with them. Do not panic when you're making cake pops. Just tell yourself that you are just having fun. That's all. Last cake pop, the one that I didn't put sprinkles in, I'm just gonna demonstrate how to dust it with gold dust. So I'm just going in with wooden spoon. In other countries, you'd have access to vegetable shortening, and that's exactly what you'll use at this stage. Then I'm just brushing over that with some gold dust, making sure that my cake pop has a full coverage of the gold color. Alrighty, our cake pops are ready, looking pretty gorgeous and perfect. Do try them out, guys. They are not as bad as you think. They are not complicated at all. Very much easy and fun to make. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask down in the comment below. Please subscribe if you haven't, like, and please do share this video. Happy baking. See you on my next video. Until then, stay blessed.